right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I am your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and joined with me today is not the captain, but all the way from Colorado, helping me out today, Mr. Adam Deacon. What's going on, dude?
Dude, not much, man. I'm excited to get on the show. And yeah, nothing crazy. Just trying to wrap up the work week, podcast week, getting things wrapped up. I'm headed to go watch my brother at NCAA's in Detroit,
Oh,
looking to wrestle for an NCAA title. So super excited to go watch that happen.
yeah. So a few things on that. First off, thank you for subbing in for Andy today because it's honestly a different time for us, recording wise. But our guest today is one that we love to get on this show. So we made a special time to get him on here because we want to pick his brain. I think most of the fishing industry wants to pick this guy's brain.
No
And but
doubt.
two, it's nice to get. It's been a while since you and I have been able to do a show, just you and I without Andy. So it's good to kind of mix up the hosting a little bit, especially for today's episode, because you and I, we have a lot of technological, fishing tech conversations. We go back and forth. So this will be a really good one, I feel like, today. But for folks who may not know enough about you, Deacon, is that you're the tech savvy fishing guy, but you're the brother of you is the athlete
Freaking
of the
hammer,
family.
dude. Oh,
Yeah.
dude. No, like I wasn't a bad athlete, I would say, but I wasn't a great athlete. And my brother and my sister are both incredible athletes. And my brother is in his super senior year at college at Northwestern. For anyone that's into wrestling, 157 pounds. He is wrestling. He's ranked second in the country, and so it'd be cool to see if he can make the finals match and shoot for an NCAA title, which he's been really close in the past. So it'd be cool to see him get it done.
Heck yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he's like got his own business and stuff started, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I guess like how athletes can monetize now. So there's some stuff there, but not necessarily his own thing yet. But I could see him getting there at some point. He's very financially savvy and likes business world.
I thought he had like some brand coming out. I thought I saw on your social, maybe he has like some camp or something where he's teaching kids. I don't know.
Oh
Either way,
yeah,
I thought he had some business mindset that must run in the family going on. But
no doubt, man. He's always looking for something like that, and like you said, camps and yeah, he's got a clothing brand. I guess you'd call it that, and that
okay.
was what I was kind of referring to, monetizing wise with athletes. But yeah,
Heck yeah. Sweet. Well, dude, we're going to get to our guest here in a second, but I have to say that it is honestly an amazing day for us here in New York because I look outside. Well, honestly, I'm pissed because I work from home, so I haven't had much time to get outside. But, dude, it is 65 and sunny here in New York. And I'm going to have my first day of open water in New York this weekend, and I am beyond excited.
no way. And is that like? I mean, are you? Is it like your first day there? Is ice off? Like done? You mean like it's gonna like not gonna come back, or is there a chance things could still ice up?
So, like, it's that stage where a few specific bodies of water will be open, but there's still a
Okay,
bunch of lakes that are locked up and will be for another maybe week or so.
sure.
But it's like it's been one of those days where all the windows have been open, letting the breeze go through. You're just like happy because like spring is finally around the corner. And
Wow,
for those in the north and those that know fishing, ice out in the north is bonkers. So
dude,
I am
that's wild.
beyond excited to get out and get fishing. So the extended forecast looks really good. It should be as of this weekend. The ice should be gone on some lakes and should not be coming back for the rest of spring. Thankfully,
That's awesome, man.
yeah, I'm
Awesome.
hyped.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so look out for some more fishing content coming from New York finally after a hiatus of stuff this winter with the ice being stupid and all. But
Heck
I
yeah.
think enough of that, and let's get our guest down here for today, Mr. John Soukup. What's going on, sir?
Hey,
What's going
Howdy,
on?
howdy. It's been a little bit since we got you on the show, but we're glad we got to. I know you're extremely busy, so thank you for taking time to get on here and chat with us.
no, thanks for inviting me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we stole a couple hours of your time today before you go on your. You said it was a 5 tournament binge.
Yeah, that's what it is, a binge. I've been trying to figure out what to call it either because I think I'm calling it stupid. It is 5 tournaments. It starts with Cherokee, the Southern on Cherokee, but I think I've decided today to bail out on tournament number two. It was going to be Cherokee Lake, directly from Cherokee Lake, drive down to Alabama and fish the Ray Scott, and that's the one I think I'm going to pull out of. And from the Ray Scott, I was going to go to the James River, which is the Northern Open, and then from the James River, drive back down south and fish the NPFL on Hartwell, and then immediately leave Hartwell and go from Hartwell to the Mississippi River and fish Ross Barnett, the first Central on Ross Barnett. So it was going to be 5 back-to-back weeks on the road, but I think I'm going to leave my truck and boat up on the James and fly home for a week and then fly back and get a little respite and see my baby and my wife and kids and, recharge that way.
Yeah,
it will be 3 weeks back to back.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a ton. I can't imagine that much back to back. I mean, like 2 weeks in a row, I've done 2 and then 1 off and then a third, I think. And I was like beat. I mean, it was just like, man, you go and you go and you go. So that's going to be exciting. And I think that it may be a smart move taking that one break in between, get home and recharge.
Yeah. I think the most I've ever done was like, I think a week and a half at one point. Granted, I was sleeping in a Nissan Altima some of the time, but still, I was like, I don't know how I gave so much credit to these guys, like especially like guys from out west that come and do it for months at a time. It is insane. Just being away from home, like I can definitely be a homebody. I like to travel, but it takes a special breed to do it and do it successfully.
Yeah, the longer I've done it, and the older I get, I guess I should say, the quicker I get homesick. It takes me about 2 hours on the road right now to get homesick, and I have to keep myself extremely busy and focused on fishing when I'm gone to not feel it. Like that last event, the NPFL in Cumberland, with all this canceled days, and I mean, it just had me going nuts. Like I was just ready. It actually beat me mentally before the tournament even started because I was just like, I'm homesick. Well, if I knew I'd been on the water just focused, you can kind of brush it off, but you got to stay busy, or I have to, or it's not good.
Yeah, and I know like FaceTime and things can make things a little bit easier because you can somewhat see them, but at another sense, it probably makes it a little bit harder too because you're seeing them through a screen, not versus in person.
Yeah, and we got a 2-month-old baby right now. He just turned 2 months a couple days ago, and you can't pick him up and help him, and cuddle him and cradle them and take that relief from mama over FaceTime. So that's a super challenge for us as a family this time. I mean, obviously we really weren't planning on Joel's name coming around, but we're thankful he did. The plan was the kids go to a little private school. The school loves fishing and loves the kids, and so they were going to let the kids travel with us and kind of work virtually. And so do a little almost homeschooling, but through our private school, and that's just with the new baby, that's not going to happen this year. So, Dang. But the goal is to fish the opens and give it a swing and see if I can qualify for the elites. And I'm not too arrogant enough to think that anybody can just a Jason Christie can, but those are the big. I mean. That's Jason Christie, that's right. Greg Hackney, that's Mike Iaconelli. That's not, to me, that's not a John Soukup, but I'm definitely gonna put my effort in, and I'm gonna go throw some punches. That.
I think you need to give yourself a little bit more credit because I think if there's one thing since you've made a name for yourself in this industry is that you've been pretty damn consistent. So I think you'll be okay. Give yourself a little bit more pat in the back.
Good start as well. It's not brush over the start to the opens.
Yeah, I think the start is like the hardest part for everybody because it's usually in Florida, and that's usually what tanks for a lot of folks. And you already got the hot start, so it's like, I mean, just keep the momentum going. You'll be all right.
Yeah, that's the deal. The momentum. It's definitely, I finished. Last year, I jumped into the last open of the year on Central. Was on Grand. Granted, I'm familiar with Grand a little bit, but I wasn't fishing that well at the end of the year. I was catching checks, but it was like last place check and things like that. And I was like, I got to figure out, I got to break the mold. And so I actually jumped into that thing with just like a days of practice. Went out there and like rode around and looked, and that way I had to kind of fish more off my instincts and and it worked out really well. I was leading after day 2. I ended up 4th place, and so this is 2 top 10s in the opens back to back. Of course, different years, so it doesn't count the same. But all it does is fuel the fire, man. Like, you win a tournament, all you want to do is win again. You win 2, all you want to do is win 2 more. It's like it just fuels the fire. So I'm definitely lit right now, and I'm ready to compete for sure.
Yeah. Well, dude, and talking about that start, one thing that Deacon and I do is when we're watching stuff, we like to observe electronics, and we know obviously you are an electronics guru. So a lot of things that Deacon and I will send each other stuff and call out, whether it's Instagram posts or YouTube videos, what have you, and we'll chat about it. One of the things that we had noticed is, the norm for a lot of guys that like to be electronic savvy now are 3 screens up front. But it looks like you just have one big old screen up there. And we were chatting about it a little bit this morning. Is that just straight up running live scope, or like what are you running up there? What's your system?
So to take a step back from it, I don't like multiple screens up front. I'm a big guy. I do a lot of on the water training, or I used to do a lot more on the water training than I have time for now. And so, shoulder to shoulder with people, it creates chaos up there. I love how the force has gone away from the non-cable driven, so I don't have the cables up there for that. And I'm also at heart, I'm an Okie, guys. What Okie do you not know that doesn't want to like dive into the willows at any moment in time for a random reason? Like, oh, there's this much water, let's go. Like, and so, too much stuff up there gets in the way. There's a lot of times. So that's why I have. So I do fish with a 16-inch screen. I run an 8616 XSV, and I build combos where I split screen. Typically, the top 2/3 just straight across is live scope. The bottom left will be mapping, and the bottom right will be 2D sonar. Running with my A scope running, and then it's just a touch of a button real quick if I want to expand into one of those fully. So if I'm settled in an area and I know I'm going to be there for a while and I want a live scope, I'll just touch of a button and it's full 16-inch screen. And if I want to see the map real quick, it's another touch and boom, my mapping is right there, can run at the same time. So I found that I don't need mapping as much if you know how to live scope. It's not like we used to where we had to triangulate and set waypoints, and one waypoint was where you parked the boat and another one was where you cast to, and you had 4 different sets of rows of to just mark off a point, so you knew how the point was shaped out. I just don't need that many waypoints anymore. So
yeah, I'm imagining that's something that can also be flexible in terms of practice or tournament days, where you might have more going on during practice to get familiar with an area, but tournament day, when you've already gotten familiar with your surroundings, that you might just go straight live scope.
Yeah, to be honest, I think you guys spend too much time on the trolling mode in practice. So my answer there is everything that you're probably thinking about in your mind that guys are using on the front, they need to be back at the console doing, for the most part. Not, that's not a 100% statement, but for the most part. And so I have gone to a 2-unit console, 212s at the console. I used to only have one. As I started in the NPFL, really, it went to just going to 2 for a backup in case one, had some kind of issue of some kind. And as I had 2 up there, I found pretty quickly that I liked running 2 different appearances at the same time, because under certain situations, one appearance may show structure better, and one appearance may show fish better. And so when you don't have that much time in practice and you're scanning through an area that you're raw, you don't know, you don't want to miss anything, because you're probably not going to spin around and look at it again unless you see something. And there's lots of times, man, I'll glance down and all of a sudden I'll be staring at one appearance for forever, and I'll look over and I'm like, whoa, there's, I just noticed something different there. So I like doing that when I'm graphing.
And when you say appearances, I'm assuming you're talking like, say you're side scanning, you've got both units side scanning, and one is going to be on a different transducer to give you a different picture, or maybe a different color palette, or what do you mean?
I'm talking color palettes when I talk about appearance. In the Garmin world, it's color, your color palettes. So that's how your appearance is where you find your color palettes. Yeah, color palettes is what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's something that Deacon and I have talked to. We've had guests on as well that we talk about. That is that people rave about this forward-facing technology and there's the obviously the crowd out there that's like anti forward facing, but people,
Really? I didn't know.
there's people that will just go and that buy stuff and assume that just because they buy it and they put it on their boat that automatically makes them better. But the truth of the matter is that you're spending 90% of that time, like you just mentioned, in the driver's seat to therefore make that forward facing sonar effective.
Yeah, and then the other part about it that's the most important part, which like someone like Johnny Schultz in Fish the Moment does better than anybody out there in discussion, is you have to understand fish behavior or none of it matters. Like a lot of times when guys, I am doing a training on a live scope or something, talking forward shooting sonar, whatever it is, whether it's live scope, active target, or mega live, it's the same returns you're going to see. You have to understand fish behavior. I mean, you can have 10 different species of fish swimming in the same screen, and certain fish behave a certain way. And I got the 90% rule. I say 90% of the time, certain fish behave certain ways, and so it helps you understand not only if you're seeing fish, but what actually that translates into what the fish are doing. Like that's the next thing is I can find fish all day long. We all can find fish, so you got to figure out how to catch them, right? But more importantly, going from practice on a lake that you've never been to in 3 days, breaking it down, and then tournament day, it really doesn't matter what you catch in practice at all. Like it's winning practice is futile. Like you have to understand where these fish are going and what they're planning on doing, and that's where fish behavior comes into play. So you can be good on your electronics as far as someone. I mean, I'm going to tell you guys, you can line up 100 anglers that are better than me at understanding all their settings and stuff and go through. I really don't care about all that. I only care about what it helps me catch more fish. So like we talk certain settings, I'm like, that doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter. Like, well, guys will think it matters, but like, show me where you caught fish with it. Like that's where I'm at, So I kind of dumb it down and just try to use it. And a part of being able to do that, like I said, to kind of back to my last point was understanding fish behavior, because the only way you actually win a tournament is you get in front of those fish. You figure out most of the time, I would say 80% of wins, guys, that guy has tuned in to what the fish are doing. It's very rare they're like, I don't know why they're doing this, but they're doing it. It does happen, of course, but most of the time, that guy is tuned into something that no one else has, and it's right under everybody's fingertips. It's right there. So that's fish behavior for you.
And he's generally, like, especially like this time of the year, right? Like he's in a position where those fish are coming to him. Whether it's a pre-spawn deal or a post-spawn deal, he's ahead of them, like you said, and he understands the migration route, what those fish are exactly doing. And I think that's spot on, because I think so many times, so many people beat their heads in on like, how did I not find this? It was right in front of me, and all these guys have blown over this, but it's simply the fact that they weren't looking at it in the big picture of, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah. You get back to the weigh and you realize what he was doing. You're like, damn it, that's what I was doing. Why wasn't that clicking? But it's just that one thing that they figured out over you.
Yeah. It could be 100 different things. It could be a shade line or a sunny spot or a log or a diameter of a log, it could be all sorts of odd little oddities but it is what once you get on that pattern and roll with it, and here's the next day, we're fishing multi-day tournaments, doesn't mean it'll be the same thing the next day. You got a starting point, but then when it's not working, like, okay, how did those fish adjust and why did this thing happen? We all talk, everybody kind of knows about the blueback herring and how the fish will adjust and run like crazy to blueback herring. Well, I feel like that's the way it is everywhere. It's just not fishing on herring. They're either fishing on bluegill, or they're fishing on crawdad, or they're eating on crawdads, or they're eating on shad, or they're eating on threadfin or gizzards, or and that dictates fish's behavior besides during the spawn more than, that's it. That's what dictates their behavior outside of the spawn, 90% of the year. So
yeah.
Kind of adding on top of the fishing behavior deal, you hear a lot of guys talk about that they'll chase fish down with forward facing. They'll chase them for a while. Is there a point where you just kind of be like, you give up on a certain fish where you can tell that obviously it's a bigger caliber fish and you want them in the box, but so you'll chase them for a little bit, but is there a time when you will give up on trying to chase a certain group?
Yeah, I think you just compare it to sight fishing, bed fishing. It depends on how much time you got in the day, how many fish you have found, how rare it is to come across the fish. There's definitely times when I'm around enough fish that I watch a fish's behavior and I said, nah, he's not worth spending the time on, And you kind of get that sense a lot more throughout the day and through practice with how they react to your lures, whether it's really worth it or not. And certain fish will spook from you, but they don't spook in a way that makes you feel like they know you're there. And those fish are harder to trigger as well. So, like a big fish may not even run from you; he's just still going to sit there, but he's just going to kind of let air out and kind of go down the bottom, or something of that nature. He'll behave a little bit differently. So it's extremely important with live sonar that you get your orientation, your casting ability down. It's extremely important because those bigger fish, for the most part, you got about, on average, you got about 3 casts in them before they really notice that something's going on. And so if you can get on them in the first, second cast, you got a lot better chance of catching that fish than if you get in a situation where you got to chase them for 300-400 yards. Even though, I say this, just 2 days ago, like last Saturday, I took a guy out, which is a few days ago, and I chased a fish for a long time, and I ended up catching it. It was like a 6 or 7 pounder, 6 pounder, or something like that. So like, we do it. I mean, I do it. It's those decisions, like I said, if you can, are usually made just kind of like bed fishing.
Right.
How many casts did you make to that fish, you think, over that time period?
Oh, he followed my lure out of a tree, and then he noticed me, and he went about 300 yards at least, 200 yards at least, through some timber and stuff. And I probably spent 20 minutes casting to him. So how many ever casts you can make in 20 minutes time?
That's a long time, man. Yeah. How when you say these fish are noticing you, and I've noticed it too, running live scope, where I'll have a fish that I think is noticing me, and in Colorado it's a lot of clear water, and sometimes I feel like, especially like throwing like a jerk bait, right, getting one real close to the boat, they see the boat. How much of these fish do you feel like are feeling that forward facing? I know in the crappie world, like that's been talked about a lot, but I think people are starting to talk about the bass fishing world. But do you feel that those fish are feeling that pressure?
I know that they can feel it. Whether they understand what's going on or not is another thing. And the reason that I know they can feel it is because, I mean, in the crappie world, when I fished the crappie tours and stuff, like there was some lakes sometimes you'd scan and that thing would hit the fish and they just boom. I mean, obviously spooked. The same as if you hit a trolling motor and they would spook, that same thing. So, but I haven't seen them respond the same way. I think it's a rare day, maybe a super high pressure day. They're already kind of turned off. They're already turned off. And, those days where they're coming to look at it and they're more curious, and then they realize that there's a predator around. And so, but I will say distance is it's always been important. You've heard from back before the sonar days, guys talking about, long casts are important for catching big fish, right? I mean, maybe not necessarily numbers, but when we're talking big fish, they were like long casts and quiet presentation and all that. And it's true, man. I'm just more and more, I'm a firm believer that the bigger a fish gets, the more that fish feeds by sight. The less he feeds by his lateral lines, the less he feeds by things that kind of are easy to trick. And so they're really a lot more tuned in to sight and a lot more to sound. And so if something doesn't feel right, they bail, And for the most part, they feed differently too. They're not, as a whole, they're not the aggressive eaters that that the smaller fish are. I think the smaller fish, one, he's young and naive, but two, he's growing. He's competing, he's growing, but also I think they got to use their body weight to kill. So when they attack, they full mouth open, and then they push through with their body weight to kill.
Sure.
So they get it in their mouth. And a big fish, they do a lot of this coming up on it and, getting vertical on it. And then they just flare their gills. They go like that, and they'll suck it in. And a lot of times when they're not serious about it, they just do a little suck, and they want to see how that reacts. So almost like poof on it, but in reverse. And so that's why you see a lot of the big fish getting hooked, outside the face and stuff like that. Is, obviously we got the rare occasions that everything I'm saying is wrong. An A-rig will a lot of times trigger, but for the most part, a lot of big fish get caught, and they're just they're more finicky on the way they feed.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, look at it in two aspects I think of offhand, right? Are like frogging. I mean, how many times do you have a giant just absolutely just suck it in slowly compared to like a 2-pounder knocking the absolute and you know, and it's the same jerking, dude. How many times do you throw in a jerk bait and one just waylays it and you're like, oh my, and it's like a 18 like 8-incher, like not even 12 inches.
I caught I caught an 8-pounder one time on a frog, 8.5, almost 9, and it was early year. The grass was still brown; it wasn't even green yet. And me and my boy were out in the lake, and I threw this frog out there, and I kind of looked away, and I heard boom, and I looked, and this thing, it was like this swell about this big that just like this deep just went, it just sucked down the whole thing. And I just set the hook on the noise, right? And I look back on that thing, and I'm like, that was an awesome bite. But that fish, he did not attack it like the 2-pounder that would just jump out of the water. He literally came up underneath it and just sucked all the water down. Like he just opened his mouth and just as strong as he could, he just flushed the water into him. And I think that's what happens a lot of times is those big ones, they come up and they just take a section of water down in their mouth, and the frog, and they don't get the frog to their mouth, like, because we're also a lot of times like we just set the hook and it's not even quite in their throat yet, you know, we just pull it out of their mouth. But, yeah.
Especially with those big ones. It's like an elevator, dude. It's just like whatever that prey is, it's just like, all right, here we go. Boom. It's just everything drops. The floor falls out.
Did you guys see that post from Justin Lucas? I think it was today, where he skipped the Berkeley spin rocket. This was impressive already. He skipped a topwater prop bait under a dock. You hear 1-2 twitch, and all you hear is that sound we all crave. Just like it's super loud. It's freaking awesome. You guys have to go look at it after this. But this is exactly what we're trying to get across here. But that is wicked. So something actually kind of interesting that I wanted to ask you about that we saw, and we talked with Luke Palmer about. Are we allowed to talk about Hartwell? I probably should have asked that before we get into it.
I mean, I can't solicit information, but we can talk about it. It'll be public. I just can't ask for information, guys. So, you know, if you're just talking about the classic, we can talk about the classic.
We're talking classic. All right. Yeah. Just want to make sure I don't want to get you in any trouble.
Right.
They were talking about using forward-facing sonar under docks now. Everyone attributed dock fishing is relatively simple in how to approach a dock, but now you have this forward-facing sonar on these deeper docks to be able to see, one, if fish are under there, and two, you can see if they're really tight up to the dock to be able to see, obviously chase your bait from under it, and it kind of gets you an idea of what they're doing. How many more of these different, so dock fishing seems relatively straightforward to a lot of people. And now we see guys using it for bed fishing. Where else do we see this forward-facing sonar being used in places where we never thought it would be used?
Everywhere. I think there's a few of us that know things that other people don't know yet, and it'll catch on, and everywhere. I mean, think of a scenario, and I'll tell you how it's used. I mean, it's used everywhere, and there's been guys for years take 2D sonar and kick it at an angle and shoot it out in front of underneath docks and stuff like that. It's just now that it's so much easier for the average guy to read it and understand what they're looking at. But there's not a scenario, guys, under the water that you can think of that I can't say that you can't somehow use it. It may not be the best tool for that situation, but if you don't, I will tell you this: if you don't feel like it's like you can use it in that scenario, like you just write it off, you're gonna get beat. But I mean, and there's a lot of pros that are that way. There's a lot of just guys that way that have it on their boat that think that they can't use it in certain situations. And I mean, we're wrong. I mean, you can. I mean, take Scott Martin in the elites. You watch him using his live scope in the reeds, flipping in the reeds. I mean, you can use it. Like I said, it may not be the best, most efficient tool at all times. Sometimes you can get caught looking at it too much when you should just be covering water or whatnot. But for the most part, it can be used everywhere.
Yeah, it's super intriguing where people just kind of attribute to these. When it came out, it was more just suspended fish, and it's cool to watch. Especially this year, there was a couple just completely open a can of worms in terms of how you can use this thing. In ways that people thought, hey, when I'm up in this shallow water, I'm not going to need this. whereas it could be extremely advantageous. And one thing I thought was really unique that Deacon had brought up that he found out was people rigging it to their their jack plates for when they're graphing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very interesting, and by the look on your face, I think we're opening a can of worms here. But
yeah.
I mean, well, and I don't know. I've done it. My boat now has got birds at the console, and then I still have landscape on the front. But what I had done when I had 2 Garmin's, I would even just lock my Ultrex to one side and just go down a line of docks and see which docks have brush on them. I mean, you can do that with side scan, and I think what forward-facing sonar has done for me is I'm the same way, Sean, in the aspect of like I really like fishing shallow just as much now as I like fishing deep, but it has made me make that adjustment to fishing deep. But what it's done now is said, okay, like you said, I think so many guys spend way too much time in practice with their trolling motor down. And that was for sure even me with live scope, because it allowed me to really gain confidence in seeing something. But now I've taken that back and said, okay, wait, now what can I do with my console to where I can build more confidence of saying, hey, look, this is the kind of brush piles I'm looking for. This is what I'm looking for. Like, it has made me go in reverse almost and made me better offshore because the confidence of running that. But it is interesting, to Bailey's point, seeing guys. I think as you're going to see more and more can of worms, like you're saying, with all these different ways guys are using it. It might not be public now, but it's going to be. It's interesting to see how some guys are mounting it off the back. And I mean, that's been a thing for a couple of guys. I've definitely noticed.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. Guys dropping them on poles and using them how they want on poles. You know, three years ago, you know, the crappie guys, when we're practicing and stuff like that, they drop their trolling motor down and they sit back with the remote and idle and move the trolling motor however they want, left, right, you know, and then they can actually stay back from that brush pile or whatever. Looking, you know, a lot of times they're looking for brush or they're looking for, some kind of crappie pile of some kind. But
that's pretty crazy. I just, when you think that it's all been done, I think that's the coolest part, is just someone that has that creative, that imagination to really say, hey, why don't we just try this? And then boom, then there's something. And then it's always the process of trying to keep it as hidden as you can for as long as possible, which in today's age, I feel like the window is getting shorter and shorter to keep.
Yeah. Everybody gets the same idea. Too many guys thinking the same way, people come up with the same different ideas. So it comes back to what we talked about originally, was understanding fish behavior, because as everybody else gets better and better at live scope, it's really those that understand fish behavior that come up on top. And that's why, the best fishermen always seem to win, whether it's technology based or non-technology based. So.
Right. So forward facing aside, say you take it off your boat and you're going to go fun fishing. What do you?
Yeah,
we
do that a lot.
Yeah. What are you going to go do? Like,
I'm going to frog.
Frog?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to frog. I'm going to take the aluminum boat and I'm going to take the Express. I'm going to put it up in 6 inches of water. I'm going to try to get it stuck, and I'm going to throw back as far back as I can in shallow stuff. And, that's I grew up fishing creeks and ponds, and I didn't have a boat growing up, so it was all belly boating, especially this time of year, man, running creeks. I'm going to tear up some props. I'm going to put myself in places that other boats are afraid to go or can't make it into. And that's how I'm going to fish. And that's how I, did really well before, getting into, sonar. I'm a topwater guy. I love to throw frogs. I love to throw spooks. I qualified for the Forest Wood Cup throwing a spook. I will throw a spook year round. I've caught them anywhere from, I think maybe February, maybe the only month I haven't caught a fish on a spook at the moment. I haven't had to think back, but I think I've caught them in every single month, year round. So I love throwing spooks.
I think something, John, watching you with the NPFL too, tune into all the live coverage there. As far as in Florida, like I think a lot of people think like, oh man, the Bass Tank and this guy and Live Scope Pioneer, and it's absolutely true as far as your ability with Live Scope. But a lot of people in my opinion, don't necessarily see how well-rounded you are. And like, you're an Oklahoma man, you're you're a shallow guy by heart. Like that's, if that's a way to win, like you're just as deadly. Like it's just, that's how it is.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, man. It got frustrating for half a second, and Pangrat called me and he was like, "Hey, man, you need to run with this thing." Everybody thinks he's like, believe me, he's like Dean Rojas can do more than throwing a frog, but he's, he's grabbed onto that to make him, to brand him and make money in the industry and stuff like that. So yeah, it for half a second it frustrated me, and then I ran with it, and I mean it plays to my advantage. Like if I catch a fish and I come away in, and people are like, "Oh, you looking at live scope?" So like, when I was I was throwing a buzz bait and flipping docks on Grand, and I was leading after day 2, and they did an interview, and I made the comment. I said, I'm looking at my live scope all day long, which is true. I mean, it was on all day long.
It's true.
and I
I'm
glanced
looking at it.
but everybody thinks I'm off, shore chasing a fish and hitting them on the head, because we do all the videos of it and show that, and that's fun, and we train on that and stuff like that. But no, I mean, not that I didn't use live scope to help me understand the environment where the fish are at, which I did. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I was fishing, that deep and burning rubber just like we do, covering water, trying to wear the prop off my trolling motor, my batteries out. That's so
yeah, that was one of the coolest things. Really diving into the forward facing stuff that when Mega Live finally came out, I got the chance to talk with Seth Fighter on how he was adjusting to it, because he was a guy. I mean, his AOI when he was talking about it was just, he just went fishing. He didn't think about it too much, just fish his confidence. But he noticed a way that it helped him not just obviously catch fish or locate fish, but understand exactly what you're saying, what's going on around you. I think it was Champlain where he had mentioned he was catching smallmouth in 20 foot of water under sailboats. And he was mentioning that in that area, he was catching them drop shotting in practice. But when he went there, he wasn't catching any on a drop shot. And it was because he looked on Mega Live, they're all suspended under sailboats. And that got him to realize, okay, they're on top, they're not on bottom. It was kind of a cool deal where it's like you're more using that tool to be more efficient than you are. What a lot of people attribute it to is just finding fit and catching fish. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you guys 90% of the time I'm just learning. I'm learning the fish behavior and the environment. That's it. Like you get in the boat. I went on a training thing this like last Saturday with a guy. A gentleman came down. We took his boat out, made sure everything was working right. We got on the water. We put the trolling motor down. We're looking, doing the potential double-digit thing offshore. And I'm like, dude, it ain't happening. Like there ain't no bait. There's no bait. These fish are stuck to the bottom. We've had a cold front. They're going to be on the bottom. We gotta make some adjustments. We did come across a fish with those adjustments. The fish was super skittish and super scared, and it was very difficult to get him to bite, but we could, because in the first 30 minutes of time we broke all the environment down in the lake, and knew how to adjust from there. And it wasn't guessing. We knew, I knew the next step to adjust based off of what I saw. And so if I hadn't had that, the live scope run in the forward shooting sonar and the experience to evaluate, I could still been out there chunking and whining an A-rig over 30 foot of water and just thinking, oh, I need to go to the windy side. Oh, I need to go to the calm side. Oh, I need to go to the trees. Oh, I need to go to the dam. And just, I might spend 4 hours running around with that A-rig in my hand, and then maybe even caught one, and then it would have been worse because then I'd, and that's not what I needed to do that day. I needed to do something different. So,
right. That's a good point.
Just a time saver, man. It makes everything more efficient. It's like you go to an area and you put your trolling motor down, and like the day before there was crappie and there was bait and there's all this stuff and it was going down, and I've been here for 15, 20 minutes now. It doesn't look right. I'm out. Like I'm going to go find them somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've told this story before, and I don't know if I told it with you guys last time, but 3 or 4 years ago when LiveScope first came out, the first fall that we had it, I was fishing a Bass Nation in Oklahoma, and it was on Eufaula, Oklahoma. And in the fall, it's known for, whopper plopper, buzzbait, chatterbait, squarebill, running rock. Okay. And so, which is an amazingly fun bite. Well, the way that the Bass Nations are set up, you practice one day, it's off limits for a week. You practice on Saturday and you fish Sunday. So you have to find fish fast. You got to cover a lot of water. You got to know how to find and locate fish quickly. And so Saturday, I went down the stretch. It was known for having fish. I put my trolling motor down. and all I saw was this right here, and that's that. Just everywhere I went, it's just the bait rolling. The bait were rolling all everywhere, all depths, all the way through this little pocket. And I mean, it was whoosh, 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 bite after bite after bite, and I'm shaking them off. Been there for about 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, I know where I'm starting them on.
Sure.
So Sunday tournament day comes around. I got my coing on the boat. We fly to that spot. We're there. We're the only ones there. I'm like, oh yeah, we're put the trolling motor down the water. I hadn't even make a cast yet, and I'm like, we're gonna have to find somewhere else to go. He's like, what? I'm like, we're gonna give it 15 minutes, man. It was pitch black, as if like we were on the moon, no life anywhere. And I caught like a couple 12-inch spots. And I was like, yeah, we got to go. And so we troll the motor on high the rest of the day. And towards the end of the day, probably around that 1 or 2 o'clock period, I finally stumbled in an area I'd never fished before. And all of a sudden I saw it. Whoosh, whoosh. The bait was just rolling. And then guess what? Boom, boom, boom. And so as soon as I saw it, I knew, boom, put the brakes on, cover this area tight. And then, I mean, I don't think I won, but I definitely got like second or third in that tournament. And once again, it was because understanding the environment and what I'm seeing. It's the same thing as one day you're catching them when the birds are on the bank. The next day you come back there, the birds are gone. There's no bites. And then the birds are over on a bank that is ugly and you never see, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to go fish that. And you find out some guy came across and caught him, chasing the birds. Like, yeah, like the birds are there for a reason. So it's the same concept.
That same intuition that you need to have. Because there's some guys I think that rely too heavy on electronics to just find them fish and not actually using their visual cues and what kind of Mother Nature is trying to show you. And that's extremely important, obviously. But I think that it's a huge strength to have as an angler to be able to leave your confidence areas that you found in practice and to go be able to fish something completely new on tournament.
Oh, you gotta break up. Yeah, you gotta break up fast in the fishing world.
Mm-hmm.
You can't mess around. Break up fast.
I like
don't fall in love too quick because it's gonna change. I mean,
hitched. Yeah.
We very rarely, maybe on some local stuff where you fished a lake for 20 years or 10 years or every day, you might know that one log that they always sit on. You know what I mean? But for the most part, it's just not that way in the fishing world. And especially when you're fishing these big opens with 225 boats and the guys have a full month in advance that they're out there hammering every fish, like that stump gets found, believe me. Like 150 of the guys found it and 10 guys caught a fish on it and they all caught one and left. Well, that obvious stump, they all caught one on and left, and that ain't gonna do you in a 3-day tournament,
Yeah. I was telling Deacon about this last year, the Oneida Bass Open. And I was talking to Pangrak about the same thing because he experienced it. Is all those guys that were there for 3 weeks were like, dude, this place is sick. We're catching 20 pounds in practice. And then the week leading up to it, everyone's like, this place sucks. There's no fish. Well, it's because you've been hammering. It's not a big lake. You've been destroying it the whole time.
Yeah.
It's gotta suck.
Yeah. It's like finding the cheerleaders in high school and you go around and you're rude to 9 of them and there's only one left you haven't been rude to. Like, how come I can't get a date? Well, you were rude to 9 of them. Like, there's not 100 cheerleaders, man. There's only 10 of them.
There's 10. You got 10 shots.
Yeah.
You screwed up 9 of them.
Yeah.
That's good.
Quick side note. Did you watch any of the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit on the Harris chain? Sean Goodwin?
No, bro. I'm so proud of Sean. Like,
that was awesome.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but it's actually a prerequisite to get a part of the Bass Tank to actually get it on live anymore. You have to be associated with the Bass Tank. Like, it makes it look like we got 1,000 pros out there and we don't have any more than the average other company. It's just our guys are catching them, man. And if there's something about being a part of a team of guys that, like, you feed off of each other, man. Like,
no doubt.
And not only Sean, but actually Mark's a part of us too. So we had 2 guys in the top 10. But of course, Sean's like all day long in the lead, the Bass Tank wrap across the boat. He's got the old school like blue Bass Tank hat too. I got to send him a new one. Like, he did such a good job. I don't know if people understand how good a fisherman he is. Like, he's won the All-American. Like, they were like, oh, he's won some BFLs. I'm like, yeah, he's won more than some BFLs.
He won the All-American.
Yeah, like he's one of those Oklahoma dominant guys. Chris Jones comes out of that same group of people. Jason Christie comes out of that same group of people. Like, they've been competing forever, and Sean's won. I mean, look him up on FLW's. I mean, he's got a pedigree of wins, you know what I mean, and top tens and money won. And this is his first year to decide to fish pro. Everybody knew he could be touring forever. He's got a very good job. He's been extremely responsible in that. And so, you know, it is awesome. The first event, he kind of, in his mind, didn't do as well as he should. But this is the Sean we know. So this is awesome. It looks like he struggled trying to figure out how to net his own fish, though.
Dude, that was the same with Lowberg, man. I'm buddy on the West Coast, Lowberg, man, just same deal. It's hilarious watching him. He's just like, he was talking to himself about it too. He's like, oh my gosh, like that was
dude.
terrible.
I'm gonna tell you the worst feeling in the world. This is it right here. Okay, you guys got this? It's this. Like every time you reach it with a net, you lean your rod in, and the fish is like the same distance away.
It's
I don't
seesaw.
Yeah, I've actually, you know, since 2000, I guess it was 2020, the beginning of the year, the February, that was the Gunnersville Classic, when I got announced that I was going to fish the NPFL, when I got the acceptance and they announced. So I quit bringing a net with me everywhere I went. So I've only every time I'm practicing, even if I'm out in around double digits, which yes, it's caused me to lose a couple fish, potentially, I don't know, but I've learned to practice without a net. You know, you can't use a net in the opens either. So no, I think I fished one tournament where I used a net and netted a couple giants with it, but for the most part, I did yell at a co-angler on Grand. I forgot about that. I had a 6-pounder pin underneath the dock with a jig, and I'm like, hey man, can you come help me grab this fish real quick? And I look back and he's looking at me, and I'm like, hey man, you mind coming and help me land this fish real quick? I think it's a big one. You know, its mouth is like this, like all pinned in this hilarious. And he's still just looking at me all like, you know, like I'm like, drop what you're doing, run to the front of the boat and grab the fish as hard as you can in the mouth. He's like, oh. He comes up and helps me pull, and we grab the fish. I was like, dude, I'm sorry. He's like, I don't know. I was just excited, and I wasn't hearing you. And I was like, I know.
Just shells.
So, yeah.
Stage fright. He's like, what?
Dude, that is awesome. I love stories like that, man. I fished the Rayburn Open as a a couple of years ago, and my guy is a local hammer on Rayburn, and he was super good dude. He's like, dude, I'm flipping, and if I were you, like, I would just go a little bit further back than I am, because I'm going to be on this edge. I'm going to be efficient, like, but you're going to get your shots if you make your pitches just into that hay grass a little farther back. And I'm like, man, I trust this guy. Like, he's being real with me too. He's being legit. And of course, like, I pinned one that's like a 7.5 way back, and he's coming, and this dude drops everything. I mean, everything, and jumps on the deck, grabs the fish for me. We're high-fiving everything. I was like, man, that dude was just awesome. Because same deal, his mouth was just whoop, 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 and it was kind of stuck on some grass, and he just grabbed it. And I was like, there we go.
Bear hug.
I got one co-angler story. It was the last tournament I think I remember ever fishing as a co-angler. It might not have been my last, but it's the last one I remember. And the fastest person I've ever get to my fish with a net was Rick Clun. I drew Rick Clun, and we both were blanking. At the very end of the day, I hook one, and he sees it at the corner eye. And before I could even yell net, like, I'm cranking this thing in, ready to boat flip it. And he dives back there and grabs the net and scoops it up and gives me a high five and stuff. And dude, I mean, like, I tell you to this day, like, we don't use nets anymore, but I can't beat the net that fast. It was pretty awesome.
Dude, what is up with the old guy? Like, man, I don't know if you guys saw Mark Rose on the coverage too. That fish that came off, and he caught, I mean, dude, that was like, he dropped to the deck and I was like, that does not happen. That was crazy, dude.
Yeah.
There's always the stories though that are intriguing of like the co-angler, like stabbing your fish with the net and like making it pop off, and like, dude, that's got to be the most awkward situation for the rest of the day, especially if that fish really, really mattered. It's got to be extremely awkward.
Yeah, we got a couple of those conversations.
Oh boy,
didn't I think we all got a couple of those.
Yeah. So I'll just net my own fish for the rest of the day.
Don't touch the net. I'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know what? I will say at least on the codes that I've drawn ever, like most of them have been pretty solid. Like there's very few that like, and it may be just a beginner or he just doesn't quite understand what's going on with the net. But like the vast majority of guys, I feel like do a pretty good job.
Yeah. So I grew up netting fish, like pretty professionally. We had a koi farm. I drowned in a koi pond when I was 2 years old. Like my first word was fish. We raised koi, and we didn't have the money to buy the high-end fancy koi, so we just bred them and raised them ourselves. And then it ended up becoming a business. We had mud bottom ponds and the whole process. And so when you're netting, $1,000, $10,000 fish, like you can't knock off scales. There's certain ways to approach fish. And so if I wasn't netting with a real net, then I was, hand netting them and stuff like that. So there is definitely some like netting. There's no netting videos. Like there's some techniques. Like the number one thing that's the worst thing to do is the jab. Like that is the worst thing to do. The fish's eyes are on the top of the head. Their first reaction is to dive down when they're nervous. So you always come up from head first and from the belly. You don't chase from the tail because you're never going to catch them. You're not going to be able to have enough drag. So you can't dive fast. If you dive down on its head, you're going right at its eyes. So the first thing it's going to do is go, and you're just going to hit the fish. So you got to, what I usually tell my co-anglers if they're not comfortable, I'm like, just lay the net down the side of the boat and lift it up. When I tell you to lift up, just lift up. And so I'll bring that fish over and net will be right there. And I'll say lift and they'll just, and so that slow lift process is actually way more safe for actually not spooking the fish than it is actually taking that jab. That jab's the worst thing you can do. No jabbing.
No jabbing.
No jabbing.
T-shirt, #, no jabbing.
Yeah.
We're gonna see some bass.
And I got beaten in my head by my dad, by the way. So like I can hear his voice, like like yeah.
He's already got the teaching process down. There's gonna be some bass tank co-angler netting classes coming out of this.
I like it.
Yeah.
But dude, I had a quick question. We don't have to dive too deep into it because it's probably traumatic for a lot of people. But that Cumberland event looked.
Yeah, Black Cat. I don't remember that event. I don't know what you're talking about.
Short memory, quick breakups and fishing.
Oh man, you know
that
what?
Was crazy.
I'm so frustrated myself. I'm a better fisherman than that. But it did get me. It did get me. I never got around them. The ones I did find, I couldn't get them to bite. And then I went. So we had about 2 days worth of practice before we really kind of got stormed on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never got around the fish. And what I found, I know where my mistake was at. And this is very common in bodies of water that are known to have a lot of fish. And when you can't see them on the graph and stuff like that, is literally they're everywhere. They're like tight to the bank. And you just gotta, you gotta fish slower and keep the trolling motor down instead of trying to run here and there. You may have to taste test the fronts or the backs or whatever, but I just never got around them. I pulled one fish off early on day one. It may or may not have been a keeper. I don't depend on what color it was, And then after that, like literally, I had 2 bites after that, and they put them in the boat. And so, other than that, man, I tried to search for a lot of open water live scope fish for the entire day, and towards the end of the day, I started seeing them, and I caught 2 of them, and I probably had like 10 more in that area. But they just weren't ready yet. Like, give me 30 minutes to an hour more, and I could have caught 2 or 3 more fish, but they just, they weren't there.
Yeah, I know a lot of you guys like watching on social media, chatting with like Keith Carson, like that. Basically, the practice you had was almost basically useless to a degree in terms of how much the water level changed and the conditions you guys were thrown at for those 2 days where you had to cancel tournament days. But talk about I just thought it was crazy when we saw the results from weigh-in of just how much of a big drop one and how much Taylor won by, but just what the weights were across the field. That was insane.
Yeah, Taylor figured it out, and not only figured out what to do, he figured out where, and I think he kind of already had an idea where going into that from some past experience, which that's the biggest challenge to that place is when you only have not even really 2 days of practice, and then and I mean, we're not even talking about the fact that day one practice it was 22 degrees when we launched our boat. So it's not like you're running around everywhere. You're frozen. You're just trying to stay alive out there, and so like that was the big challenge. The whole lake looks the same. So like to figure out the 1,000 little pockets, which one they were in, it was super difficult. And then day two, it was decent practice. Day three, it poured down raining on us. So there's a lot of guys didn't even go out. I actually went crappie fishing day three. I got tired and I did. I mean, I started popping crappie with and so I don't think it was useless. Like I think that a couple things you could have done, like learning lessons that could have done differently. Knowing that we all knew it was going to rain, we all knew the lake was going to come up. I think that the guys that decided to really focus down lake on the vertical stuff, the extremely vertical stuff, like that's not going to change too much. And then they didn't. The couple guys that caught them really good down there. Maybe the fish activity changed, but they were still in the same areas. And then, playing the game that Taylor played, I think he knew, like I said, that area historically is known for, afterward, you find out after the fact that it's known for different falls and stuff, bringing the fish up. You possibly could have done some studying in advance, figuring out, what areas we're going to do that. That's easier said than done when you only have one day, though, because guys, like one creek runs clean and another one runs dirty, one runs swifter, one runs slower, and like those are things you don't know unless you have time to run around and look and look and look and look and look. So that was the biggest challenge. A lot of guys, they just, and it was 25 degrees that morning too. Like you don't have a lot of, and then we had a delay too, guys. We don't talk about that. It was only 10 minutes, but it was another delay. Like I didn't launch my boat until 9:10, and like I'm watching, so and so since 7 o'clock setting the hook out there, like, so it's just there's a lot to that was, just an unfortunate, difficult event.
Where's the next NPFL at?
Hartwell,
dude. It's gonna be awesome. So I'm excited.
Third week of April. So
it's gonna be a lot of fun. Obviously you got Cumberland next for the Bassmaster Open, but looking ahead to this binge, as we called it earlier in the show that you're about to go on. Are you just taking it? I mean, I'm sure you're taking it, event after event, but is there one that you're kind of might be a little bit more excited for than the rest?
I mean, it's probably a hard no. As far as one more, I'm excited more than the other. Sorry, I'm not a little bit more jacked about something. Listen, the truth is I got so much going on in life that when we talk about studying ahead and preparation and stuff like that, I don't have that time to be able to do that. Like I do some studying. Okay, there's some certain things that I will always do, but like right now, like all I've got around me is tackle. And today I'm trying to get which I'm not going to get done. I'll have to do it tomorrow. I'm trying to get 5 weeks worth of 4 different tournaments because I'm not going to have my truck back home for 5 weeks. I'm trying to get it loaded and organized in a way that's efficient so that like when I go from one event to the other, I know where that stuff's at. I know where, I know how to get to it. So I try to simplify things. In my mind, I'm going to go with a lot more of my confidence baits. So I don't have to try to find the magic bait. It's just, they're all tools or whatnot, but the tools do change from field to field. So, to answer your question, another thing that I do is I'll study weights, tournament weights, so I get an idea of, what I need to be finding and locating. That's extremely important to me. And I'll try to do a little bit of what I can of just historical areas. And that's a fallback plan. That's like fishing retreads. You know what I mean? Like the fallback plan for retreads is you never found something. So like, I'm going to fish in this area because I know there's a lot of fish been released here. Right. Mm-hmm. So like historically, what areas are known to hold a lot of fish? But then after that, I don't do a lot of studying. And here's what I found. I found that, talking too much with buddies, studying too much will get you potentially a check. And I was very good at getting checks for a long time. And I found when I broke away from that mold, got myself uncomfortable, put myself in a position to be vulnerable to blank or to feel really bad like at Cumberland almost, even though I got 44th at Cumberland, you know, but that's when I started winning, and I mean winning a lot, and it's because you allow yourself to tune in more to your instincts than the back of the voice hearing, well, so and so does this, and then you try to repeat what so and so does. Anytime I've ever had bad events, it's because I've been listening to doc talk or people, even people that are trying to help you out, man. You got a buddy that's called and got something figured out. He's like, hey, do this, and then you end up doing it for 2 or 3 hours. You might catch a couple fish or not, but it just threw you off your whole game. And the biggest thing that I'd like to do when I'm practicing is eliminate water. Eliminate, 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 eliminate. It's the biggest deal. It's for me. It's so I can stay laser focused and I can understand, you know, what the perimeters are of what I'm fishing. So I say all that, okay? To answer your question more directly, I mean, there's 2 things about Hartwell that excite me. Potential, we're going to hit it potentially in the spawn. That's exciting because spawn time is exciting, but I don't know that that plays to my strengths over somebody else. So I'm kind of hoping that it's more of a nasty post spawn. Like we just get off the tail, like it warms up, they spawn over the next couple of weeks, and then we get into a little bit of a funk, which there'll still be spawners even during the funk, right? And potentially maybe the shad spawn doesn't happen yet, and so we got a funk going on. And that's where I think that will play to my favor if we have a funk going on, of being able to, you know, when the fish aren't biting because they're hungry, when you're making them bite, I think that's my advantage over somebody else. It's not my favorite thing in the world. My favorite thing would be these fish are on beds in 2 foot of water and we're throwing frogs over their heads and they're smashing, or, you know, we're sight fishing. I mean, that's fun. I mean, that's fun fishing.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think that that's so I'm excited potentially for that because I think that could fall a little bit in my wheelhouse. There'll be a lot of pressure anytime lakes like look like they line up for you. You get a lot of pundit pressure, like as if you're supposed to just win it when it's like that. And I haven't done very well yet when it's lined up that way. So clearing my head of that and making sure I'm not, you know, spinning out trying to put too much pressure on myself, I think it's going to be extremely important for Hartwell. But Cherokee, which is the next one coming up, I am excited about. The reason I think I'm excited though is because of where I'm at in the points. With it being 8th place fishing in the Southern, if I can somehow come out with a top 40 or even a top 10 again, I mean, good night, dude. That just has me sitting so close to the elites for the rest of the year. So, of course, we could work opposite too on me. But the little bit that I've watched on, I've never been to any of these lakes, by the way. So, like, the little bit that I've seen on Cherokee, it looks like it sets up a little bit like Keystone Lake, which is a local lake next to me, which we do a lot of flipping rocks a lot. So I'm comfortable with that. And then if they're not up in the rocks, you're going to be able to see them on live scope to some extent. So, you know, I think that plays a little bit in my favor. I have studied the weights on Cherokee, and it looks like you got to catch them. Like it looks like there's a lot of fish on the lake. You can come in with 12 pounds thinking you're doing good, and there's 40 other people that have 13 to 14 pounds. And so you got potential to separate yourself, but you also have potential to do pretty well, but then not get good points. And so that's probably what I'm more from the little bit I've studied. That makes me more nervous in practice. Okay, how do I get bigger bites? You know, so that's what I'm looking like there. The event after that is the James River. I've never been to the James. I guess it's tidal, you know, so we got a little bit of that to go in. I hear rumors of F1s in some parts and, you know, others and things like that. I'm familiar with F1s and how they behave. It's going to be April again, which, you know, do they spawn? Do they not spawn during that time? It sounds like it could be, you know, a shallow water deal. That sounds like a lot. Honestly, it just sounds like a lot of fun fishing up there if you get around them, is what it sounds like. So, even though I do think you can live scope anywhere in the world, it may not be the smartest tool for me to pull out all the time in practice. I may need to cover a lot of water, just, you know, fishing and try to get around fish. Sounds like there's a lot of dead areas. So that makes for a harder event when you're talking about 225 boats maybe crammed into certain areas. So This is the little bit that I have in my head, guys. I'm just letting it all out.
I like it,
I
man.
mean, yeah,
Yep.
Hartwell, and then after Hartwell, we got Ross Barnett, which is the Southern or Central Open. I have been on Ross Barnett. I've been on Ross Barnett. I think it was around late May or June, somewhere in there. It was her Bass Nation Regional, and what was really cool about that is I drew Jamie Leish the final day, like on boater draw, and I was like second in my state, and he was leading the whole tournament. And we were supposed to go in my boat, so I gave him my boat because he was leading the tournament, and I got to sit back and watch him like put on a clinic, and it was pretty cool. He won the tournament. I didn't have a chance at mine because and so I ended up in second place in my state, and so I saw what they absolutely do when they get off the shore. Okay, I saw it. I witnessed it with my eyes. Like I had a first hand everything, and it was amazing. And then I've also seen, like, I've studied, like, I remember back when the Opens went there, and it was like a late February, early March deal. Back when like Tommy Biffle was fishing it, and he was throwing the Carolina rig direct, and a lot of guys were just on top of each other in these little spawning areas. And so, I've got an idea is what I'm saying is, and then like I said, I was, I spent a little bit of time in the water then, so I kind of know where they go, and I know where where they go to spawn, and know what they do after that. And so by Mississippi, late April, of course, there's always going to be some spawners, but there'll be some post spawners, by that point as well. So there's a timber lake. It can be dirty, and it also can be clean. So, if it's clean, I mean, I might be able to put that live scope to work, guys, and if they're post spawning at all. But if it's dirty, it may not be as much of a factor, as much of an advantage. So,
yeah, that sounds like some exciting few weeks coming up for you. Then obviously we're looking forward to rooting you on. I got to give you props for being able to look at like the next event and being like, hey, if I can get another top 10, that'll have me sitting really good for elites. Where I know a lot of guys will, like, even the thought of that will like make them spin out in that event, and they'll just kind of like overthink everything. Whereas you can be like, hey, if I do pretty good in this, I'll be sitting pretty good for that last Southern. So I give you props for being able to acknowledge that mentally and have it not get to you, or at least not let other people think that it gets to you.
No, it doesn't get to me. I mean, dude, I think it's just like a fight. I'd rather be up in the fight than down on the cards. So like you're up. I mean, you got the momentum. You gotta roll with the momentum. You got to get behind, and let it push you a little bit. And so I definitely feel like there's other people that are more scared of the fish than I am. I'm not scared of them. We just gotta we gotta land on them. That's the deal. And dude, I mean, to everybody that's ever qualified for the elites through the opens, I mean, dude, it's the gauntlet. It's everything we've heard and said. But if you don't qualify in your division and it takes all 9, like, you can't stumble. I mean, you're gonna have to fish. I don't know how many. If there's 80 guys that are fishing all 9, I don't know how many of them there are now. Maybe 100. There's a lot of them now. There was like only 40. It's like twice that much now. And there's big. I mean, dude, Oklahoma Zach Burge. Like, there you go. Like, there's a guy that belongs on the elites if he wants to be there. Like, yeah. So and we could go down the list of guys. So you can't worry about the guys. You just got to worry about the fish, and then make sure that you're always catching a limit, even on the days when you think you need a swing. Just go catch make sure you catch your limit, and that way you get the points.
The bigger picture.
Yeah. Big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I know we're going over here, but one last question. It's kind of a personal deal. I can definitely see your confidence moving at that next level, at that national scale per se. And again, you've always done Bass Nation and that kind of a thing. I feel like, and it may be part of with Doc Talk and that kind of a thing. Like I feel very, very confident. I feel like I can win anything at home, right? Whatsoever. And I'm not talking to anybody. There's none of that going on. At that next level, do you feel that there was a turning point for you on building that confidence at that more national scale where you're on places you've never been? And that's obviously can go really, really deep, but can you point to anything where you felt there was a turning point for you?
Yeah, so mine was a slower process, and I don't know, it's a maturing process. I'm 40 years old, and I got back into tournament fishing when I was around 27. So, and then when I do something, I do it all in, right? So during my 20s, I didn't fish. I didn't fish from the time I was like 18 till 27. I didn't pick up a rod. Like I was focused on life and business, right? So when I had the chance to get back in, I got back in with the Bass Nation, right? The reason I say this is the way the Bass Nation's formed. You end up going to regionals and you end up fishing on a team. And I think that, I qualified for 2 national championships, so 2 Bass Nation national championships. And I've been 3 pounds away on a 3-day tournament from qualifying for the Classic twice. And there might have been 2 or 3 guys ahead of me, but it was only 3-pound split. Like
Sure.
one good fish, twice in 3 days. And in my regionals, I've never finished below like 3rd in my state. I've always been like 1st, 2nd, or 3rd in my state. And so I will say it was an accumulation of a lot of regional events, multi-day events on lakes that I haven't ever seen that have helped, because I can look back and see the mistakes, and I'm hard on myself. So if I see a mistake, I try to go work on it.
Get fixed.
A little bit of combination of that, guys, and then a lot of it's all a mental thing. Everything I'm saying is a mental. And when I qualified for the Forest Wood Cup in 2019, so in 2018, I decided I was going to fish the Costas. I didn't have a lot of time to practice. I did mediocre. I qualified for the championship. Like I don't think it was the top 30 or something. Qualified for the championship. I was in that mid 20s or something. Nothing spectacular, right? And then at the Costa, I end up qualifying for the Forest Wood Cup. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell the medium long version for you guys. All right.
Like it.
Okay. And so I was raised in the fish farm. I was raised fishing. My dad, the only thing that we had in life that we were bond to was fishing and maybe college football. Like that was it. We didn't really see eye to eye about almost anything else in life. But my dad was my dad. I loved him. He was extremely hard on me. We didn't see things eye to eye. Like I said, a lot of different, like whether it's faith or whether it was politics, like we didn't see eye to eye. We were very much opposite on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But we were unified, and we loved to fish, and we loved watching college sports, right? So my dad, just like anybody, was my world, and he got sick with cancer in 2018. And when I wasn't going to go to the Coastal Championship, and so Kyle Cordiana actually called me and said, "Hey man, you gonna go?" And I didn't want to tell him what was going on. I was like, "No, I got something. I'm busy." I made up some excuses, which I had plenty of work. I always had plenty of work to do as a flooring contractor. And he was like, "Oh man, you should go. You might qualify for the Forest Wood Cup." And I kind of laughed, and then I thought about it. It just hit me. I was like, I might. Like I'm gonna. And so I went over to my dad. I kind of him-hauled around because my dad was about to go through chemo and radiation and all that stuff. And he was like, he just told me, he was like, "You need to go. I want you to go." And so he didn't want to be the reason to hold me back. And so I decided to go. And my co-angler, he wasn't going to go if I wasn't going to go. So when I said I'm going to go, we just kind of jumped in and drove up there. And forgive me for not remembering the exact days, okay? But I think the tournament starts on like a Thursday. And I can't remember if you had an off day on Wednesday. Okay, I can't remember that part. But I know this. We got there with only 2 days to practice. And so I'd never been to, it was on Kentucky Lake. I'd never been there. I put in the back of the lake, the back of like a sandy bay or sandy creek or something like this. And so it was in the fall. There was a drawdown, and we start running out first thing in the morning. We start running out, and I look down the water, and it was like brown, and it was green, and it was brown, and it was green. I was like, "Oh, it's what?" And then I realized I'm running across these shoals that are this. I had zero mapping on my boat. Like I hadn't prepared for this thing.
Lake.
I hadn't prepared for it at all. I didn't have a chip map. I didn't have anything. And I mean, my electronics weren't working. I had nothing. I mean, I had no mapping or nothing. So I looked up and I saw a buoy, which I realized was a channel marker. And so I sat my boat in the boot right next to the buoy, and my heart's pounding. I'm like, dude, I'm about to kill this. And my co-angler was like, "What are we gonna do?" I said, "We're gonna fish this like Okies." He's like, "What's that mean?" I said, "Look at that point, looks good." So I trolled up to the first point, took my spook out, bombed it out there, and I'm like, shh, and then kaboosh. And I'm like, "Oh, I got one already." And I'm like thinking Kentucky Lake, right? I didn't understand that we were in that transition of the carp tearing Kentucky Lake up. Okay. So I'm reeling it in. There's like 30 with it. My co-angler's spook is like 30 feet away, and he gets one that eats it, like, I'm like, oh, wow, look. And I was like, oh, that point looks the same as this one. So I go to the next point and goosh. And so by the end of the day, I got my hooks rolled, and I've had an 8-pounder, like with 3 other 8-pounders, like trying to fight for the spook with the hooks rolled. And I've caught like 30, had 30 keeper bites.
Yeah.
And Kyle calls me and he says, hey, man, how was your day? And I said, oh, dude, it was okay. I mean, I had caught them pretty good. I had like 30 keeper bites and saw a couple 8s. And I'm thinking Kentucky Lake, right? I'm thinking, like, okay, this is good, but maybe not, 25 pounds a day good.
Kentucky Lake in its prime. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And he said, dude, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm serious. He said, I talked to like 20 pros, and he said, no one got a bite today. No one got a bite. And he's like, whatever you did, you figured it out. Like, I was like, you serious? He's like, yeah. So the next day I drove to Nashville and I got a chip card I had hummingbirds at the time. I lived in 98. So I brought it back, put the chip card in, and then I was like, okay, I can run around now. And I found a little hump, caught a 4-pounder on it on like an A-rig. We could throw an A-rig. And that was my practice. That was it. And so I end up top 10 in the thing. You know what I mean? Wow. And I think I finished 6th. And dude, listen, I'm a man of faith. I believe I have a lot of faith that God's purpose things in my life. And that's one of those situations. Yes, hard work. I'm not going to knock any of that stuff. Okay. But this is a situation where my dad got to hear a lifelong dream of me qualifying for the Forrest Wood Cup. He did not make it to see me actually fish in the Forrest Wood Cup. He passed away during that time. And so when I fished the Forrest Wood Cup, and I feel like it was a gift, dude. Like, I told you how my practice worked. Like, first cast, first spot. The only reason I was there because I didn't have a map. I just set the boat down.
Yeah.
When Forrest Wood Cup came around in 2019, my dad passed away. I was just happy to be there. I felt like this was my pinnacle in the fishing. Like, that's all I thought was going to ever happen. And, I'd get back to laying floor tile and be back. Now, we had already started the bass tank, but it was a hobby that we were going to create, like, lures and stuff like that, and like a think tank for bass fishing, how the name got the bass tank. And so my partner Scott was there because he's an engineer of mine. He was like, in case something happens, I can be a backup boat. And I broke down both days. Forrest Wood Cup, brand new boat, brand new electronics, and it was because it's all installed wrong. And that's where the idea of us going in, and I had live scope on the boat at that time. I was one of the first ones to have it because of just the timing and being at the Forrest Wood Cup and all that. So that's where the idea of us, doing the installs and coming and training people on live scope. And then I knew, I was like, dude, this live scope's going to change everything. And so then we got that whole story. Okay. So I end up, bombing the Forrest Wood Cup. I was like in the 30s or something like that, but I did break down both days and like my last 3 hours or something on day 2. But you asked me about where it clicked. Okay. It clicked because I've got 20 years of business experience, life experience. I've had a hard, my 20s were way harder than most people's 20s. I wouldn't wish that kind of stuff on with people, just the way life was. And so I've experienced a lot of stuff, man. And then I've been able to see a lot of fishing experience, happen. And so it's a mental thing, 100%. And now I've got all the experience that I've had. I've also got all the life experience, and I feel 100% blessed. The NPFL coming around, 100% a blessing. The fact that I somehow got invited to fish the Wally Marshall, which I wasn't even a crappie fisherman, the last week, and then the first Wally Marshall, we got second place. And then I got to tell all the crappie fishermen in the world about live scope and sell to all the crappie fishermen in the world. And then the next year I get invited to fish the NPFL. And so instead of chasing the elites or chasing something, I got to focus on crappie fishing again grew the business, and then immediately go into the NPFL. And, I hadn't bass fished for a year and a half, and I picked up my rods. I put my Wally Marshall at the Wally Marshall. I put my crappie rods down, picked up my bass rods, fished all winter. Wired the fish comes out. First day on the water with them, first fish is a 10-pounder. Second day on the water, we catch an 11-pounder. I catch 2 double digits. They were the 2 biggest. I don't know if they've caught bigger or not. They were the 2 biggest. And then, the NPFL comes around. I win the inaugural event. And I win the 3rd event. So, And to be honest with you, I'm leaving a lot of details out because I'm being a little shy about my faith. But dude, my confidence is in God. Like I have plenty. I mean, I know what I need to do as a fisherman. We can talk fishing all day long, but I do feel like I've been blessed. And as long as I continue to do what I need to do there about giving God thanks, um, this is like I'm just watching this thing grow. Like the bass tank taking off. All my fishermen, Jason Christie winning the classic, Sean Good winning the top 10 again. Like it's I don't know how people can't see the bass tank and say that we're not blessed, dude. Like it's just crazy the way things are going. And so yes, we can talk fishing all day long and talk about the way things are, but it's a mental thing. It's a thing of faith. It's like when something happens bad on the water, is it really that bad? Like I've
Right.
got a beautiful family at home. Yes, I got responsibilities because I have stresses. I owe people money. I owe business money like everybody else does. I had the same thing. Um, and but I put that stress and I put it on God, and then I let my instincts that and the experiences that I've had, I can see things clear. You know what I mean? Then when you let yourself get spun out, I think a lot of us take fishing way too serious. We take everything we're doing way too serious. So then like our world's crumbling because that's the pinnacle of all we have, and that's absolutely the last way to actually do good in the fishing world. You have to be at peace. You have to be calm minded. Yes, we get that fire. We all get that competitive fire, like wells in us.
Mhm.
But as long as you know how to use it to your advantage and not use it to your detriment, which it takes maturity, it takes experience. So that's a long version answer, guys, but that is about as truthful and honest answer as I can give you.
That was
sounds
awesome.
like yeah, that was amazing. It sounds like positive people create positive environment, which creates positive results.
100%.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's awesome, dude.
Mhm.
Well, man, honestly, that was an incredible episode, and I seriously can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day. I know you're extremely busy to get on here and chat with us. I know if anyone is still, for folks that listen to this and the duration of this episode, if
Yeah, no kidding.
they haven't learned something, they should probably just quit fishing. Because I've learned an immense amount on this show, and seriously, thank you for that, John. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, guys. Anytime.
Yeah, well, John, good luck. Obviously, have fun getting all that tackle ready for your long weeks on the road. But we'll be rooting for you when you get over to Cherokee and obviously through the rest of your week's competition. But kick some butt and good luck, man. Safe travels.
Yeah, safe
Thank you.
travels, dude.
All right, John. We'll talk to you.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Yeah.
Dude, talk about knowledge.
Dude, yeah. I'm sorry. That went really long. That was probably my bad asking a couple questions at the end, but I was like, dude, I gotta get some details here. That was incredible.
Oh no, I'm glad it went longer because that I think is so important. I mean, holy crap! Talk about something that you guys can take from here. Is one, just in terms of how to approach fishing, two, how to be at peace about it, and then three, just talk about freaking mindset.
Mindset is the more like it's everything, dude. It is everything in everything. Like it is,
Literally.
man. It just there's no secret pill. There's no. It's just it's all up here for sure. Like you get to a point where everyone can do the same thing fishing wise, right? Like everyone can make the right cast. Everyone's sufficient with finding fish, and it's the mental side at that point.
Got the same gear, but if you can do it up here better than the rest, then I mean, because dude, I mean, straight up, there's guys out there that are incredibly more talented than some of these anglers.
Mhm.
And, you can get in the boat with them on a fun fishing day and you think, oh, I don't know how these guys aren't wreaking havoc on everyone. But the truth be told is on tournament day, they're just not mentally as, strong or dialed as some of the guys that are just mentally. They might not be as talented of a fisherman, but come tournament day, they don't crumble under pressure. They're just cool, relaxed, and they can get it done.
Dude, you're dead on. I think more and more I see, and this was just from fishing some of the opens as a co, and then the Toyotas too as a boater. Like you see someone going down the bank, like, oh my gosh, that's so and so pro, or you're fishing as a co behind somebody, and it's like, man, he didn't do anything that crazy. Like he was flipping and pitching, and it wasn't like something that blew me away. And I'm looking at this guy as someone who's super successful in the fishing world. And it all comes down to between the ears and that decision making. It's like he's not that much better than lot of people, I think. And, and I think someone too that comes to mind as a realist in that, like, if you ever listen to James Watson talk about, he's like, dude, I'm just a regular guy. Like, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm fishing professionally, but like, I'll be the first to tell you, like, there's a lot of guys that could do what I'm doing, and it's the mindset and having that winning ability. It's crazy to me.
Oh, there's so many guys that would probably whoop up on a lot of these pros that, one, just don't want to have, like, quite simply just don't want that lifestyle.
Mhm.
And then two, just guys that can't afford to even try to get to that level right now. Guys that are, got families, got a 9-to-5, that can't afford to take that stab just yet. Or maybe
No
they just don't want to. But it's a super cool rabbit hole to go down. And huge thank you to John for joining us. Down below in the description, guys, I'll have his social medias and his new YouTube channel that he made a few months back that
Nice.
I highly encourage all of you to go, because there's a lot of learning from that as well. And talking YouTube channels, plugged it a little bit this week, and I'll take a small plug here. Is I'm starting a little side gig for some kayak fishing content if you guys want to go sub to that. But looking forward to next week. What do you got coming up in the hopper, Deacon, for Monday?
Monday, man. Yeah, we have got a great episode coming up with Trent Palmer of Sonar Pros. More sonar talk, man. This is the week of electronics. It's funny, kind of with the business from the bass boat. It seems like I get into a topic like bass boats, and then I go and talk to a bunch of guys about bass boats, and then it's electronics or whatever. And so right, and it's like series, and so like I don't know. The last episode, if you missed it, was a lot about forward-facing sonar, and I did not expect that from the owner of Drop Zone there, a very unique drop shot weight. But anyways, yeah, that's kind of the topic we've been on. As with Soukup today, the master at it. It's going to be an episode on that, and I want to hear about his business and update. He's been on the show previously before we had merged and everything, and man, he's seems to be killing it. He's fishing the NPFL and he's running the business. He's one of those guys we're talking about. Bailey doesn't plan on fishing pro ever, but he's fishing the NPFL because he feels that a 6-event schedule that's spread out is something that he can handle and still run his business.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, there's a few guys in there. Jake Boomer from Alpha Angler, John Soukup. Like, there's a lot of guys that are in that field. But heck yeah, I'm personally looking forward to listening to that episode. For Tuesday Night Live next week, we do not have our guest in line yet. We have 2 in the works. One that most likely can't do it, but we'll get back to you guys when that is officially scheduled. But for next Friday, we have Tristan McCormick coming.
Very cool. Yeah.
So that'll be a cool episode with a young gun who Dave Mercer loved to talk about his hair on stage. That's about all he talked about. It was like shampoo endorsements, but we will promise to not talk about that for an hour's worth on that episode. But a good week coming up. And folks, we appreciate you guys. Stay tuned, and we'll see you guys next week.